What's up, captains? This week's episode is with Adam Chin, who I had the pleasure of interviewing, and it was a ton of fun. It's always a blast when I get to sit down with people who understand this language game, and he goes way deeper than understanding it. In fact, he's actually the co-founder of Enlifted with Mr. Mark England, who I had on the podcast prior. So if you haven't yet to listen to that episode, go listen to that one with Mark England as well. In this episode with Adam Chin, we talk about a lot of fun stuff. We talk about how important it is to have a vision for yourself and how you can break free from the prison that you create for yourself by only using words. We talk about the difference between reacting and responding, consuming versus creating, and how you can use social media to your benefit, to use it in a positive manner instead of letting it suck your time away from you. We also get into what it means to upgrade your problems, which was one of my favorite things from this episode. And then last, but most certainly not least, we talk about what it means to be free. And that's another one of my favorite topics. And ironically, I mentioned in this episode that at this time of recording, I had yet to be arrested. So I mentioned that I've had the sheriff call to me many times for not wearing a freaking mandated mask on a plane. And since this recording, I was actually arrested. And if you haven't heard that episode, go listen to that one. It's pretty eye-opening to hear what is still happening in what is supposedly a free country. So go listen to that episode. It is titled, I Got Arrested for Not Wearing a Muzzle, because that's really what it is. And the whole process of what that looked like, why I got arrested, what they labeled it as, criminal trespassing, which is complete bullshit, and the process of what it was like to be in jail and to not be free, right? So that was an interesting episode. And I think I'm going to record a podcast number 2 with Adam Chin to talk about freedom specifically, especially if this nonsense continues to happen. So before we dive into today's interview, I want to remind you of the show sponsors. First and foremost, this episode is brought to you by Lambs, my favorite EMF blocking clothing company. And if you're not familiar with EMFs, they are electromagnetic frequencies that are emitted from your electronic devices, like your phone and your laptop, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, all these things. And they cause oxidative stress in the body, which contributes to a whole host of issues. If you're interested in learning more about that, listen to the podcast I recorded with the founder of Lambs, Arthur Menard de Calonge. That was a fantastic episode. And you can get the hookup on any of Lambs products. I rock their beanie, their shirt, and their underwear. And they also make stuff for women as well. Like, for example, if you know anybody who's pregnant, they make, I forget what it's called, but one of these things that wraps around your belly to protect your uterus, so your baby isn't exposed to all these damaging EMFs. And you can get the hookup if you use code Captain Morgan or use the discount link in the show notes of this podcast. On the same topic of EMFs, this podcast is also brought to you by WaveBlock, this cool little sticker I've got on the back of my phone. And with this, all you got to do is stick it on once, and then you're protected. So it reduces the amount of EMFs that you're exposed to from your cell phone. They also make them for AirPods. If you wear AirPods, I definitely recommend getting a WaveBlock sticker, because then you're getting the Bluetooth EMF directly into your brain. And they've proven this. Like for your cell phone, for example, cell phone companies know the damaging effects of EMF radiation, and they tell you not to hold your phone right up to your ear when you're taking a call. Yet, what do most of us do? We do that exact same thing. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to carry your phone in your pocket, at least use the WaveBlock sticker. If you're going to use AirPods, at least use the WaveBlock sticker, because it actually does significantly reduce the amount of EMF exposure that you're exposed to. And I actually tested it with my meter. So to get the hookup on anything from WaveBlock, use code Captain Morgan or use the discount link in the show notes of this podcast. And last but certainly not least, one of my newest favorite products is from HVMN, which stands for Health Via Modern Nutrition. And it's their ketones. These are exogenous ketones. Exogenous just meaning that you take it externally because your body produces ketones naturally. If you're in a fasted state, if you eat primarily fats, you are in a state of ketosis, which means your body is burning fat as fuel. And you can take exogenous ketones to kickstart that process and to give you mental clarity and physical endurance. I took these before a run a few weeks ago, and the results were amazing. I ran farther than I've ever ran before, ever. I ran 7 miles, roughly 7 miles, and I felt freaking amazing. I could just keep going and going and going. I was honestly shocked. So yeah, since that point, I've been hooked on ketones. I took them today for mental clarity because I'm in an overnight fasted state. I fast for at least 14 hours every day. And then technically that is breaking your fast, but you're still in ketosis. So you get a lot of the mental performance and clarity benefits from being in ketosis. So to get the hookup from anything on HVMN's website, use code Captain Morgan 10, and they make more than just ketones. They also have collagen. They've got some nootropics, and I've enjoyed everything that I've tried from them. So check it out. Again, that's code Captain Morgan 10, or use the discount link in the description. All right, now let's dive into today's interview with Adam Chin. Whew. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Taylor Morgan. Yeah, you like that, Adam?
I like it.
Yeah, that's good, right? So today's guest is Adam Chin. And Adam began his human optimization journey 20 years ago, working with and studying under sales and personal development author Jeffrey Getomer. During a decade of traveling, living the expat life, experimentation, and discovery, Adam co-created the Enlifted Language and story model with his partner, Mark England, who I've also had on the podcast. His passion for travel and learning are rivaled only by his desire to help people improve their lives by cutting out unnecessary drama and getting clear about what matters most to each and every one of us. Adam, welcome to the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast.
What a pleasure to be here, Captain Taylor Morgan.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. And it's fitting that we're recording this episode today because I just updated the recording for one of my modules of my personal coaching program, the Vision module, where I have my clients create their MVVP, mission, vision, values, and purpose. So it's fitting that that's something that you talk about as well, cutting out unnecessary drama and getting clear about what actually matters to you.
Absolutely. That was one of the primary drivers for Mark and I getting together and building out Enlifted. We experienced in our own lives personally. We witnessed family and friends and loved ones really degrade the quality of their lives and those around them through, again, the key word is unnecessary drama and conflict, which cause suffering. And, you know, when people think about the unnecessary stuff, it's the self-inflicted wounds, it's the rumination over things that really could have been dealt with many, many, many years ago. And instead they end up fermenting into some pretty nasty personality traits, stories. And what we want to do is attempt to cut those things off as soon as we can, to what we call translate them into something different that we can actually work with, because life is fun and life's got lots of challenges ahead of us. And why get stuck in one challenge when you can, keep growing and moving to the next one, upgrading problems, so to speak. You've heard that phrase before, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I was introduced to you from Mark England. I was introduced to Mark England through Chase Tollison, who I originally had on my podcast, who reintroduced me to the world of Enlifted and language, and I was hooked instantly. So I reached out to Mark. He sent me the core language upgrade, which was fantastic. And those were two of my favorite podcast interviews, just talking about language and our beliefs and self-limiting beliefs and how we hold ourselves back, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. Like we don't even know that we're holding ourselves back, just purely based on the language and the stories that we keep repeating to ourselves.
Yeah, well, that the stories can get encoded in the language, and once it gets encoded, it becomes habitual, and then we keep going back to those same phrases over and over and over again. Just something like, I can't believe she said that to me. That's a very simple sentence. And yet when you break it down, and I'm sure Mark and Chase have done this with you on the show and then in private, you start looking at the construction of that sentence and you see how that's essentially a sentence that's been constructed very similar to how one constructs a prison. You figure out, okay, how do I build something with words that traps me inside of them and prevents me from getting out? Well, that's what a phrase like that is. It's a phrase that's built to trap you, because it's a phrase in which you are a passive character in your life story. She said that to me. I can't believe it. All right. So you're the victim. She's the perpetrator. You can't believe it, even though you do believe it because you keep saying it over and over again. And you did believe it at the time and you believe it now, is my guess. And so there's all these cues that are built into these simple phrases that we repeat to ourselves. And if you can figure out a system to practically identify them and then to translate them, like I said, in a way that you can then actually do something with, it's like the map to the prison. I'm a big fan of films. I may make a lot of film analogies on this podcast, and I'm a big fan of prison movies like Escape from Alcatraz and the more recent Escape from Dannemora.
Have you been to Alcatraz?
Yes, I have. I've actually been to Alcatraz. Yeah,
it's pretty cool, right?
It is now. I mean, imagine if you had to be stuck there as a prisoner.
I mean, visiting. Ago. Yeah, visiting is pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and they constructed it in a way where they say maybe 2 or 3 people escaped in the history of the prison, and we've no idea if that's even accurate.
Yeah, they probably got eaten by sharks.
That's true. It's cold water out there, and there's lots of sharks. So yeah, how do we take those same building blocks that we could build castles and build villas by the sea in the tropics instead of building these prisons? That's what we do at Enlifted is to help A, bring it to people's attention, and then B, give them the tool set to do something with it consciously.
Yeah, I love that analogy. The difference between conflict language and architect language, using it as, building a prison or building your tropical island, right? That's awesome. And I actually just taught this today on a webinar that I was giving for a company. I included language in there because it's so important, and also because you remember 90% of what you teach. So the fact that I get to teach this to other people is awesome for me, right? But one of the things that stood out to the audience was this idea of projections, right? Placing external or placing sole responsibility on some external circumstance or somebody else, right? And the second that you can realize that, right, by just first bringing it to your attention and then switch it to, whoa, okay, I can control this, this, and this. So I gave the example of she never listens to me. Okay, well, does she never listen to you, or does she sometimes listen to you? So, okay, she sometimes listens to me. And so that's focusing on something that you have no control over, right? But you do have influence over it. So you can change that to she sometimes listens to me, and I will listen to her first to better understand her and communicate more effectively. So it's taking the blame or the getting out of the victim mentality into what you can do in the moment. And I just think this is so powerful. And I love talking about this type of thing because I think that this is the conversation that people need to hear.
Great example that you just used, Taylor. What I like to say to people is that we're authoring our lives every day. So we're authoring our lives. And if we use a lot of projections and, with what you just mentioned, we position ourselves as either secondary or minor characters in our own autobiography.
Wow.
So think about that. I mean, that's a really devastating thing to think about. If you're positioning yourself in your own story and you're at the mercy of other protagonists, right? So now she is the protagonist in this scene, and maybe the next scene it'll be her, and then the next scene it'll be him, and then the next scene it'll be zer or they or whatever. It'll just be another pronoun. Every single scene, that the main character, and you just happen to float through life and at the mercy of other people's actions. And that's, and I think we all start. Many of us start that way. We pick up on this as kids. Like a lot of folks in society. They operate under that paradigm of other people are in control and I have minimal to no influence on how I live my life. But the fact is that we have influence over any situation. I mean, even our reactions, we have influence over that reaction.
I like to say your responses.
And that's because you're next level. I start with reaction. Eventually we get to response, and response is even better. Right. Yeah, I mean, by the way, I had to share this story. Speaking of my mentor, Jeffrey Gettimer, we had one of our Enlifted coaches work with him recently, and he's a 75-year-old guy now, and he's done a lot of personal development work. One of the things our coach said to him was because he was having some issues reacting to his daughter, and he told him, he said, you know what, your daughter, she needs a responder right now, not a reactor. When they don't call them first reactors when they show up to a scene of an accident, they call them first responders.
Wow.
So that was really powerful. I love that translation, react to respond. So yeah, man, I'm some people listening to this, if they're new to the game, the language game, I'm sure your audience is further along than most. And they may hear these words and they may say, this is all hocus pocus. This is all just, word games. This is all, fine. If that's where you're at now. And if you look at each statement that you make and how you're thinking about things, listen, go and look at how much money is spent on marketing and how much money is spent on propaganda, throughout the world, throughout history. There is tremendous power in shaping language and shaping how we look at big ideas specifically, but those same persuasion techniques and those same techniques to shape the minds of a population can be used to shape your own mind on your own at a micro level. So this stuff's very, very important and very powerful. And that's why, it's important for us to at least acknowledge that it exists, that there is such a thing as framing, and there is such a thing as language being used strategically to understand things in a certain way.
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra. Boom.
With my words, I create. I love that. Yeah. Wow. So if we had to end this podcast in 30 seconds, which we won't, but say we had to, what would be the most impactful point that you would want to get across?
Well, when it comes to language, it's once you see it, you can't unsee it. I mean, once you understand the power of what it is that, okay, rewind. What's the one thing? Mark England, my co-partner here in this endeavor, one of the best things he's ever said is that we're not in the why do I feel this way business. We're in the how do I feel this way business. We're not in the why do I keep going through this business. We're in the how do I keep going through this business. And there's a very powerful differentiator when you take the mechanical look at how you keep repeating this behavior versus why. Because why can put you on the therapist sofa for a decade or two. And you can keep exploring why. You can keep diving into that issue and go deeper and deeper. But if you can just look at the how, and most of the issues that we encounter in our training with our coaches, with our clients, they simply want resolve. They want something, they want a situation to be resolved, to be over with, to move on to the next thing. And that's where the how comes in. You look at the situation mechanically, figure out what you're saying to yourself, how you're programming yourself to think that way. Go back, think of it another way, practice that, rep that out. Next thing you know, different behavior, different reality. So that's the most important thing I would communicate. Are we done now?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks,
right,
guys.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah. No, that's all. Yeah. I posted a quote the other day. I don't remember it exactly, but it's something along the lines of, like once you ask better questions, you start getting better results or leading a better life. So asking, yeah, that's good. And then to what you were first going to say, another good quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson is, "The mind, once stretched by a new idea, never returns to its original dimensions." So once you hear these things, and once you grasp this concept, there's no going back. Right? It's become aware of it first, and then you can start to adopt these habits.
You take the red pill, man, you're in. So to use a classic analogy, Taylor, so what were your thoughts when you first played with the language work that Enlifted was Enlifted the first time you started learning about the language work and story work, or had you discovered it previously?
Maybe subconsciously previously, but for sure the first directed work that I did was in the core language upgrade, and then I also went through the Way of the Enlifted Athlete as well, which was pretty funny. Mike Bledsoe's acting skills, that was entertaining.
Yeah, I shot that. I'm the video guy, so we developed that together. Mike's a good sport about it, and I just say Mike is great. And I noticed that Mike and you follow each other on Instagram.
Yeah, had him on the podcast.
Yeah, he was on the show, of course.
Yep.
And Mike is one of the guys that broke down. Okay, let's change the word. He highlighted the way the business that you and I are in, and he illustrated it in such a simple way. He said that people that get into the work that you and I are doing, they're interested in improving three areas of their lives. It's health, it's wealth, and relationships. And even though I'd been in this personal development world for a very long time, to that point, he did make that very clear to me with that very simple paradigm. It's like everything really boils down to that. Because if you can get those three things, then you can move on to the next level, which is like soul work and things like that. But you got to be able, most people, you can get them at it. Can I improve my health? Can I improve my wealth and my relationship with money? And then finally, can I improve my relationships with other people? And I'm interested, with what you're doing and who your clients are. What here I am interviewing you all of a sudden, Taylor, but I am interested because I want to compare notes. Like what are the driving forces that you're finding when people come and work with you, and what do they want remedied in their lives?
Well, in my program, I work with impact-driven entrepreneurs. So for a lot of them, they want to increase their impact because they understand that there's some deeper purpose behind what they're doing. I don't work with anybody who just wants to get better for selfish reasons. Like if you just want to make more money to buy the next house or the car or whatever, I'll turn you down. Like I don't give a shit about your money. I care about helping people so they can then grow their impact and then make the world a better place. So my purpose for the Captain's Lifestyle as a brand for this podcast is to #make thriving standard. So obviously there's a lot that goes into that. So that's who I work with in my program, but I also work with men a little bit separately. And for them, it varies. The most common ones are improving time management. A sense of purpose comes along with that because if, a man, what's the quote? A man who lacks purpose distracts himself with pleasure. So, getting that all settled. And then a lot of it is physical, want
Yes.
to lose body fat, be confident in yourself, get healthier. Happiness also comes along with that as well. So health, happiness, and productivity.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Is with that whole concept of purpose and of meaning. And you're a millennial. Is that of that generation? Would you say?
I think I was born in '95.
Okay. Yes, you're like a very young millennial.
Okay.
It's interesting because different generations, they have different drivers and different keywords, and you see this over and over again. I often, when I work with people around your age or speak with them, they're very much driven by purpose, by finding meaning. because so much of when I mentioned before about health, wealth, and relationships, so much of it was very much surface level, very selfish oriented. But ultimately, I think all those things do come back to, because like there's two ways you can look at health, wealth, and relationships. You can look at it as like, oh, that's a very selfish thing. But then you can look at it as like, well, if I can fill each one of those cups, then I can be of tremendous value. Okay. So if I can have enough purpose, can help me get to the point where I can fill those cups. And if I can fill those cups, then those cups will run over. And then I'll just be providing tremendous value to all the people that I know and love. And I think that's the way that the through line. And I think certain generations see it at different stages. Maybe for the boomer generation, I'm in the middle. I'm a Gen Xer. So for the boomers, they saw it as oftentimes as the wealth, the actual health, the relationships at that level.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't necessarily looking at the whole stack and then the value delivery. And I think that with Gen X's, we were so focused on the value. And I think, so we're at the end stage. And I think the millennials, they're very much focused on this purpose stage because they understand that there's got to be some sort of power at the top of the waterfall. So it's going to push everything out, and downstream. So yeah, that's really interesting to hear you say that. And would you say most of your clients are around your age range?
No, it varies pretty greatly. Yeah, I usually don't. I mean, I've got a few clients who are my age, a few who are a little bit younger, but most are mid 30s, early 40s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
because well, a lot of them have kind of hit that point to where they're like not midlife crisis, but quarter
Looking at it.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
they think that way, especially the worse their health is, and they're like, shit, if I don't change something now, it's not looking good in the future, right? So yeah, a lot of them are a bit older.
Yeah. Well, that's pain, pain and pleasure, man. People are motivated by one of the two. And you've likely heard that. Are you a Tony Robbins guy at all?
Yeah, I mean, not super deep, but obviously I know who he is.
Yeah. I mean, his whole thing is people are motivated by one of two things: is pain or pleasure. Most of us are motivated by pain. If you want to see someone who, when I say us, I don't mean you, or I don't mean me, but if you took a sample of 100 people, most of those folks would be motivated by pain. And you see this, how they act in their lives. So if their health gets to a critical point, that's when it's like, okay, now I got to do something, right? Versus when their health is okay. And then they're like, well, I want to make this great. And then they just push themselves to go from okay to fantastic, right? From they're at a 7 and they want to go to 10. That's pretty rare. What you often see is like, I'm at a 1 or a 2 and I got to do something.
I think that's just because that they don't fully understand what optimal looks like. Right. Like so many people I talk to, like, how's your diet? Oh, it's pretty good. Anybody who says their diet is pretty good is pretty full of shit. Because unless you know specifically, unless you can clearly say what you're putting into your body, your diet is not pretty good. So it's like the person who eats McDonald's, who thinks that they feel fine, but then they don't know how they could feel if they actually ate properly, because they've just been feeling this way for so long. It's like their default state.
And
right?
That's why a lot of people who tell me that well, I trust my intuition, and I say, well, your intuition it can be tuned, right? Because if you've been in bad shape for 20 years, and how can you trust your intuition? Your intuition led you to this point, right? But I do want to jump on this. I like what you just said, and I think this is a natural transition point for us to go to back to the story with Mark and I, how we started this business and getting into the language work. Is I met Mark 2007. 2000. Yeah, it must have been January 2007 in Koh Samui, Thailand. Okay. So my father is Thai Chinese. So he's Chinese by genetics, but he was born in Thailand. I went back in my mid-20s to reconnect with that culture and to learn the language. And I had a little money in my pocket, and I was like, I'm going to go and live life for a little while. Mm-hmm. So I did. And I ended up at this place in Koh Samui, Thailand, called the Spa. And the Spa, one day I am going to write this book about the Spa. The Spa was one of the very first I would call it an incubator for just the craziest ideas. What mostly revolved around health and wellness and mindset.
Any
Okay.
mushrooms involved?
Okay. Now, yes, of course. I mean, come on, it's Thailand. It's Thailand, and there's like hippies around. There's going to be mushrooms, right? I would say that this place mainly was focused, because of what it was. The spa was focused on doing detoxification protocols. Now, this one was a Dr. Bernard Jensen protocol in which people would do these things called kalimas, meaning they would take these 3 5-gallon bucket of coffee water, and they would flush out their system twice a day for 7 days and not eat. Okay.
Like
one of
doing
these
enemas or what?
Imagine an enema and then make it a bucket, like the kind of bucket you would use to clean a house or to put paint or something in. It's like a large bucket.
It's all going up your ass.
Yeah, and you hold it. Is this getting TMI? If it is, please fast forward 15 seconds, listeners. You put enough of it up your ass until you just have to let it go, and then you flush it, and you put more, and it keeps going, right? You just got to get through the whole bucket, right? And you flush it all out, and what comes out is really interesting if you're into that kind of thing. And by the way, yes, you can. They give you chopsticks, they give you gloves. You can do all sorts of interesting things.
Give a little taste.
Okay. Now you've crossed the line, Taylor. No, those jokes have been made before many times at the spa. So essentially, the point being is that you would give up the idea of food. You just stop the hunger thing and stop eating, because that makes, that there's a whole science behind this and a whole practice that goes back to the Buddhist days, of fasting and quieting the mind. And what happens is after day 2 or day 3, one does get very quiet. And so I went as much as 10 days. I think Mark went as long as 14 days on one of his. Fasting and
no calories.
Well, you have a little bit of juice, a little bit. Like I'm talking, maybe you do 50 calories a day for 14 days, and some interesting things happen. And as interesting as that is, in the weight loss, and then the feeling good inside and feeling clean and empty, and your head being clean, and all that stuff like that. As interesting as that is, the most interesting part about this place was because of where it was at, in this beautiful beach in the middle of Thailand, and it was relatively affordable. Let's say it's like $600 or $500 for the week. Okay, something like that. Okay, then you find your place to stay. The whole thing is $700. Very affordable. Okay. The people that would show up at your table in the evening as you're drinking your herbal broth with 0 calories in it, and it tasted like gym socks. Okay. The people that would show up would be from all around the world, first of all. So world travelers. You'd be sitting there, and I was generally Mark and myself were the only Americans there, generally. But then there'd be people from Turkey, people from England, people from Germany, people from Africa, people from other parts of Asia. Okay, South America. And they would not only be from different places, they'd be from different economic backgrounds. There'd be a multi like billionaire guy over there, and then a backpacker over there, and there'd be a 65 and 70-year-old person there, and a 19-year-old over there. So all of these people coming together and doing this for a very long time, and there's a lot of repeat customers, a lot of ideas started to move around. So what I'm getting at here, Taylor, is that because of this environment that was created with people doing something very strange, very different, I should say, from their day-to-day activities, and working on themselves to make themselves healthier. One of the lines that would come out, you hear it over and over again at these table sessions, we would sit down and talk, would be, most people have no idea what it's like to feel good, so they have no idea how bad they feel. Just like you were just saying, that's one of the things that came. People said that over and over and over again, because when you're in that environment and you've got this beautiful ocean breeze and this great sun, and you've quieted your mind, and you've cut out all the nasty food, and you're hanging around people and having real conversations. This is before the days of mobile phones too, like in terms of the iPhone and things like that, smartphones. So people were just talking to each other, they were reading books, so all these great ideas came about. And this is where a lot of the ideas that Mark and I have implemented in within Enlifted stem from, because we would sit down and we would, all these concepts like mind power, NLP. You had super crazy hippie stuff like didgeridoo healing and and stuff like that. All in yoga, of course. Yoga is a big part of this story. Would all come together, and we would just pick out, like much like Quentin Tarantino picks out different, you know, bits from different exploitation films in the 70s and in the 60s and things like that, and makes them into a whole. We did that with Enlifted. So where was I going with that story? Well, mainly there's a lot of things. I would say, you know, one of the major gifts that Mark and I have received over the years is the ability to surround ourselves with tremendous people and a tremendous community who, of people who want to work on themselves and who are interested in feeling good because they've experienced it before and they want to feel better and they want to keep building on that. And our community at Enlifted's 200 people strong out, almost 250. Mm-hmm. And you go to one of our events, man, and it's like the spa in Virginia. You know, it's
you going to be at
cool
the
people.
Resilience seminar in next month?
Of course I am. Are you going to be there too?
See you then.
Oh man, see, and yeah, and you'll totally get it. It's Chase, it's you, it's
Do I have
Angela
to put anything
Cisco.
up my ass?
Well, now that you mention it, no,
I know this guy.
Yeah, well, you know, that's where I was going with this story ultimately, Taylor. It's speaking of Tarantino, it's like it's like that the watch scene in Pulp Fiction. No, you're not, your ass is going to be okay as far as I'm concerned. What you do in your own time is up to you. You're more than we don't judge anybody here. Negation acknowledged and Enlifted.
Yeah, I like that you just said negation acknowledged, and most people listening will have no idea what that means. But you just said we don't, or I don't. I forget exactly. The don't is the negation, which is a focus on what was or what isn't, what wasn't, or what can't be. So a lot of times, you know, people say things like I can't or I don't have time. Those are examples of negations, and instead flipping that over to affirmations. So just wanted to clarify that for everybody.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that. So what is a negation? Like you said, they're very simple. They're words like don't, can't, won't, haven't, shouldn't, couldn't. Okay. So, okay, we call them contractions, you know, and when we're learning English and grammar. Well, why do we call them negations? Well, when you use a negation in life, I don't want to do that. Okay. What picture did you just come up with in your mind? What did you just see? Most people, when they say, I don't want to wash the dishes, you know, or I don't want to feel bad. That's even better because we say that a lot. I don't want to feel bad. Oh, I pictured myself feeling bad. And maybe I even felt a little bad just by saying it. Okay. Well, easiest thing you can do is remove the don't, put in the do. Okay. So I do want to feel bad. No. What do you want to do? Well, I do want to feel good. I do want to help my wife or my partner or my husband or my children by cleaning up the house. I do want to be of service. You know, there's different ways to translate that. And yet you do that consistently and you start seeing, again, you start getting really clear on what it is that you do want out of life. And you start getting really clear with your goal setting specifically. We see that a lot with people who are, their goals are framed in the negative.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be poor.
Yeah.
I don't want
to. Poor is a mindset.
Amen. Absolutely. Poor is a mindset.
Yeah.
I don't want to, you know, be old and broke or just, it's like, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you acknowledge what you do want to do, then it's like, okay, what's the next step? What's
the reticular activating system?
Mark brings that up a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's a real thing. People may have heard of that as the red Volkswagen phenomenon, I believe. And that's when they say it's the study, I think it's about 35 years old now, where someone goes and they buy a red Volkswagen and the next thing you know, they're seeing it everywhere. They notice it. Oh, it's over there. They have it there too. Well, what you've done is essentially the mind can only keep so many things in focus at a time, because you're constantly, as we're looking out into the world, we're constantly, think about how much information one's taking in at any given time. So you have to filter out the majority of it. So what you do is when you tune the RAS into what you're actually looking for. So instead of you having it hijacked randomly, you actually say, no, I want you to start looking for this. Okay. You start shaping, again, what we call as mindset, and to look for things like opportunities. Look for, this is a great one. Look for things to be grateful for. Gifts that life gives us. A buddy of mine, when I was 25, 26, I was at a retreat with him, and he was a little older than me. He's a big dude, played football at UNC, offensive line. And we were hanging out. We went to the toilet, the John, together, taking a leak. And he's like, hey, so Adam, he's like, you know what you do after you get done taking a leak? I was like, oh no, here we go. Some sort of like hazing. And he goes, no. He's like, listen, man, you say thank you. I'm like, what? He's like, no, you say thank you, man. He's like, cause you know what? Some guys, it doesn't work. And I was like, and that was literally almost 20 years ago. And I remember that every day when I take a leak, I'm thinking, you're right. Some guys, it doesn't come out, or it hurts when it comes out. I mean, something like that is like, that's a gift. You start tuning the brain into thinking in that way. Like everything that works is a gift.
Yeah. I gave the example on my webinar today of there's like a terminally ill cancer patient who was lying on her deathbed about to pass away. And the thought that came to her mind was what I wouldn't give to change a dirty diaper right now. Like, imagine that. Like, we just take so many things for granted that we're supposed to have these things. Like, we're entitled to all of these things. No, you're not. Read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
It's the hardest book to read.
Put things into perspective.
That 1984 is a couple other ones that are on my list of like, if when I read that, I have to be in the right place, because it's so powerful. It's so powerful. The gratitude. There's a movie. So you liked Viktor Frankl's book?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's my number one recommended book now.
There's a movie called Life is Beautiful by a filmmaker named Roberto Benigni. He won, I want to say, Best Actor in the 90s for this movie. It's a similar type of a concept, where someone who's in the worst situation that you and I could ever imagine being in, making the absolute best of it for at the behest of his son, because he knows that if he does this in an inelegant way, it will affect his son negatively. And he wants to make sure his son survives and thrives afterwards. And it's really powerful. And it brings me a little bit to tears just talking about it. It's one of those things where it's like that gratitude for being alive, for every single gift that we can get. That's one of the great life hacks, is gratitude.
It is. And my best friend just walked into the room as I'm recording a podcast. Come say hi, Kevin. Come say hi. I'm going to make you come say hi. You walked into the room. You say hi to the podcast.
What's up, Kevin? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, well, we've got, I don't know, like 15 minutes left. So you just sit there and be quiet like a good little boy. Because you mentioned Thrive. Well, first off, that movie, is that like on Netflix, or where can we find that?
If there's a lot of services out there that you can search for these films, where you can see what's streaming, where it's streaming. I think Real Good, ReelGood.com.
This is like some Russian hacker website.
No. This is like a regular website, which they aggregate all the streaming services like HBO Max and Netflix and Apple TV Plus, and then they'll tell you which site you can watch these movies on. Mm-hmm. But this is an Italian.
What was it again?
Called Life is Beautiful. The name of the site, or the name of the movie?
Yeah, the name of the site.
Real Good, ReelGood.com. And you put in your services and they'll tell you if you can stream it for free or whatever.
Okay.
But it's a very powerful film. And like I said, it's a very similar thing. It's like the poetry version of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a good companion to that. So that's another life hack. It's funny. We got to gratitude from the reticular activating system. We got to the reticular activating system from negations. So you see how the language work all connects to how we live our lives. And they're very simple things that can be made complicated, but they're not complicated. They're practices like anything else. And that's one of the things that, that it's so interesting being in this personal development world for so long is you realize that it all comes down to, this is all just a way of being. So it's a practice, right? Like the way of the enlifted athlete. We call it that because it's the way, right? It's how we be, quote unquote, in this world, and we're human beings. And those
Mhm.
practices stack up. And next thing you know, that defines who you are, who I am, by those simple actions. And Jordan Peterson talks about how, your life isn't that sitting on the beach with the cocktail. Your life is when you come into the house and your partner greets you, or when your partner wants to, or you get up and you're thirsty when you're watching a movie and you bring your wife or your girlfriend or your partner a drink because you anticipated they were thirsty as well. Your life is how you treat people and how that's your life. It's not the highlight reel.
Mm.
It's those small actions that make it up. And what's smaller than a word? What's smaller than a word choice?
Let's talk about the difference between consumption and creation. Because I was just thinking about this today. So many people are just mindlessly consuming. They're scrolling, they're not getting anything, meaningful done. They distract themselves, where instead they could be using that energy to create whatever it is. Like, obviously the people I coach, business owners, they could be using that energy to create something in their business. If you're not a business owner, you could be using it to, I don't know, create a game for you and your kids to play. How can people first recognize that they're in the consumption mindset, on autopilot? How can they first recognize that and then switch over to creation mode?
And that's a fantastic question. And it's something that absolutely is topical considering where we're at in this age of, TikTok and things like that.
TikTok is the worst.
And yeah, well, I mean, you look at the attention span numbers and, how often how ephemeral these things are. You thought the tweet was bad. Wait till you see the TikTok. Um, you know, Consumption, I think, can be divided into two. There's distraction, but there's also active consumption. So active consumption is necessary. Like, if we have to be able to actively consume
Good
things. I mean,
distinction.
when you go to the Louvre and you go to see the Mona Lisa, or you go to the Uffizi Museum in Florence and Firenze in Italy, you're actively consuming tremendous works of art, and maybe you're even inspired by those pieces of art to do something great, or you understand that there are greater limits to the human creativity than you believed before, right? If you read a great book and you're actively reading that book, you can see the thought process. I'm reading a fantastic book by an author named Mark Harris right now on a film director and a comedian named Mike Nichols. And this guy put so much time and effort to research this person's life and to make sure that he told the story in a beautiful way. It's a 1,000-page book, and I'm thinking, this is someone who put the time into doing this and put the effort and had a vision for this, right? So, you see this, you can extend it to a great film or nonfiction books or, any sort of discovery or an invention. That's active consumption. Okay, I get that. Okay. Now, passive consumption and distraction. Listen, I get it. I mean, I'm one of the first generations that came along during the Nintendo and the early PlayStation stuff. So I get the whole like video game mentality, the short burst of, I'm just going to distract myself away from dealing with what I have to deal with. Do you believe in gut feeling?
Is that a trick question? Absolutely.
Well, to me, there's a great line by the film critic Roger Ebert when asked if something was pornography or art, and he said, pornography and art, you just know pornography when you see it.
It's intuition.
It's intuition. This is where like the gut comes in, and you have to say, am I distracting myself right now, or am I actively consuming? Is the thing that I'm consuming now going to enrich my experience on planet Earth? Or am I simply distracting myself from something I should be doing right now? And just fine tuning what that is. because I actually think we're living in a moment now in which we have a tremendous lack of deep appreciation for art and for creation, because everyone's just too busy doing this. It's like,
Yeah.
but this is an appreciation of art. This is the opposite of that. This is yeah. And I was telling Mark about this because Mark recently got off of Instagram. I'm sure you've heard about this. Mark nuked his account.
Did he?
He
No,
nuked
that's
it,
too
yeah.
bad. I loved his account, all the things that he would post.
Many people shared your opinion, but him, it was, as we were talking about it offline, I said, Mark, they're some of the greatest engineers and mathematicians and marketing geniuses are sitting around every day, thousands of them, and they're figuring out a way to suck your time out of your life and put it back into this program. And there's a way that you can actively and strategically utilize Instagram and a lot of these platforms so that you can build a business, build a presence. But if you find yourself in this loop, this behavioral loop, in which your life is out of your control, and you feel like that this thing is I'm reporting to this thing, those engineers and those scientists and those marketers, they've done their job, and Mark Zuckerberg can watch his share price go up a little bit more.
Yeah.
So you got to be really careful. I think that it would be nice to see people getting back into the deep appreciation of art rather than the constant distraction. Agreed.
I'm glad you made that distinction between mindful consumption and mindless consumption.
Yeah, good way of putting it.
It's perfectly fine to scroll social media or watch Netflix if that's your intention, if you're being mindful about it. I posted this the other day on my Instagram story, which, just disclaimer, I'm not hating on social media. I wouldn't be able to have a business if it wasn't for social media. Like, my influence has grown tremendously over the past few months. And I'm grateful for that I get to help, spread health, happiness, and productivity through social media. And I posted that if you find yourself getting distracted by social media, which so many clients come to me saying that is their biggest distraction, the phone, I say, well, you're in charge of your social media. You can choose who you follow. And if you don't want to unfollow somebody, like if it's your friend or family, but you don't want to see their posts, you can mute their posts. So, and then you can engage with the content that you do want to see from the creators who you do want to see more of and learn something from. So like, comment, share, save the posts that you want to see more of, that type, and then mute the accounts that are doing you no positive benefit. So you can curate your feed to be a positive distraction every time you open your phone. That's why I posted about it on my story. I noticed that because sometimes in between work breaks, I will scroll social media. And on Instagram, I've made this realization, like, wow, like I'm getting distracted right now, but I'm learning something because I've curated my feed to only show the accounts that are bringing me positive benefit.
Absolutely. You've crafted it into a tool. And then, what you'll do is you'll keep sharpening that stick, and you'll figure out how you're going to really utilize that thing over the next, several years. You'll sharpen it as much as you can. And then part of the sharpening will happen in the app. Part of the sharpening will be out of the app, how you use it, how you time your use, how you can, control the urge to use. Mark and I are actually building an app right now for Enlifted.
Yeah. Is that not out yet?
It's coming out. It's in beta right now. Well,
okay.
If you've yet to use the beta, we can send you the link.
Okay.
But yeah, we did a lot of research when it comes to app statistics and phone use statistics. And I believe the number, I want to make sure I get this right. You can find this on Buildfire, BUILDFIRE.com. The average American picks up their phone 226 times a day. Think about that.
That doesn't surprise me.
Every 90 seconds.
I rely on it for my business, probably too much so. Soft talk noted, probably.
Yes.
So definitely am getting better at that. But for the average person whose business does not rely on social media, that is astounding.
And this is something that's been debated recently. It's funny because one of the developers, or two of the developers on our app team, they're doing this part-time. They work a full-time job at a large tech company. And I could tell that their response time in Slack and a lot of these apps that are messaging are very, very quick. Like they're
Instant.
always on. They're always on. And I think that's part of that culture where they're at. Whereas, Mark and I being entrepreneurs and being out of that scene for a while, for us, it's like, it may be tomorrow when you get back from us, it may be the next, certainly within an hour or two is generally, because we pick up our phones, let's say, at least I do. Now that Mark's off of Instagram, it could be the same for him too. But we pick up our phones are there, and then maybe once an hour, soft talk acknowledged, around once an hour, say once every 30 minutes, we'll check the phone, which to me, it's like, okay. That's fine. Dude, that's one thing we can touch on really quickly is I was telling you the story of when Mark and I met and that whole crew in Samui in Thailand. Here's the thing, man. There was a world before smartphones, and to experience.
I wish I lived in that world.
Dude, you missed out, man, because it was so interesting to get off the grid was a real thing. You just had to go somewhere.
I think about this a lot. I thought about it today on this podcast. I want so bad to just like get rid of my phone, to not have any technology. And I'm going to do this eventually, is just take a whole week, go out into the woods, bring nothing but books in my journals, and just, I was going to say do nothing, but it's absolutely not doing nothing. It's, doing what I would want to be doing. And I keep going back and forth on how I can incorporate this into my life now, because again, so much of my revenue relies on social media. I'm now I hate to say the term, but influencer, right? So I promote these products. I get paid money based on, the products that I believe in, of course.
Nearly 12,000 followers on Instagram alone, I noticed.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for that because I do get to spread the influence, or I should say, I don't want to be spending all that time on social media, even though I love getting to connect with people and seeing the messages that come in. Hey, you're such an inspiration. You helped me go to the gym, this, and that. I love seeing that. And I don't want to spend that much time on social media.
Have you considered using a VA for some of this?
Yes, but it's not the same. Like the personal connection, I have to have the personal connection. Yeah. It's not the same.
Well, to be a little optimistic with this, there was a great articles going around about 5 years ago about a guy who was an assistant to both Oprah Winfrey, a personal assistant to her, and also a personal assistant to another billionaire. And he said that the one thing he noticed with all of them is that they would never, binary strategic, that's a binary word, never, take a day off. They would work. Now they would be on a yacht, sailing off the Isle of Capri in Italy. And they would be sitting there with their laptop in the morning to check in on the business. And then they would take the rest of the day to have a beautiful time in the water with their friends. So it could be that being at least semi-attached to what's going on is okay, at least for the most part. There could be retreats like your 1 week vision. And you could announce that to your following and say, hey, following, I'm taking a 1 week retreat, and I'm going to come back with some amazing things. And I appreciate, you all for following me along this journey and giving this space. But I think it's a good idea to check in, because I mean, as an entrepreneur, I check in every Saturday and Sunday. I mean, I am involved in the business in some capacity. And I do it in a way that's very relaxing. My breathing is good. I look at the numbers that I want to look at. I see if there's anything to be attended to, but it's a very non-cortisol type of a situation. I'm breathing well, like I said. I'm looking at it very clearly, but it's an hour, maybe 2 hours, in those days at most. And my mindset's good about it. I will say that getting off the grid for a week, as someone doing what you're doing, man, you're going to find some very interesting things there. And I want to do a translation with you here live on the podcast. You said, I want to get away and do nothing. Well, nothing is a binary word. Right. It sounds more like you want to get away and do
something. I stopped. I was going to say do nothing in the terms of, social media work. And then I stopped myself because I did acknowledge that. I was like, that is not the right word.
Well, let's think about this real quick. So people say, "Oh man, it's Sunday. I just want to sit around the house and do nothing." Well, okay, we get what you mean, but by saying that, if you said, I want to sit around the house and do some things," okay, what are those things? Well, recharge, relax. Are those things, are those valuable? Why are you, because if you denigrate those things into nothing,
Mm.
well, then will you ever value them?
I like the example you gave in The Way of the Enlifted Athlete when um, you said, I don't feel like working out today. Okay, well, do you feel like recovering today? That, as somebody who used to be an addicted athlete, was like, whoa, like,
Yeah,
yeah, that hits. Because once you say, I do want to prioritize recovery, okay, you're going to foam roll, you're going to take the Epsom salt bath, you're going to go to the sauna, do breath work. Not working out doesn't mean you have to sit around and do nothing.
absolutely. Yeah, those things, those yin activities, again, but they're activities and they're fun activities. Yeah, actively watching a wonderful movie or a beautiful series, or reading a tremendous book, and gaining pleasure and inspiration from that. That is a something. That is a definite something. Like zombieing out, that really is something, you know?
That's a pretty clear sign that you don't have a purpose or a deeper
Yeah.
sense of meaning behind whatever you're doing.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Well, I know we're coming up on time. There's a few more things I want to ask you. Um, how much time you got? You like cut
I
off
can
now?
go. I can go. It's Friday evening. My
Okay.
wife is making wonderful filet mignon
Ooh,
downstairs, which I'm going to dive into
yeah.
at 7
Jealous about
p.m.
that.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm so
Okay.
excited.
So we'll bust through these. What are you most excited about this year?
Oh, most excited. I am most excited about our business ossifying into a business. Like it's we've done so much stuff over the past 18 months. Okay, so 18 months ago, the certification started. Okay, Mark had this idea. We ran with it. The first group went great. We kept refining it, and then I would say certainly the last half, if not the full year of 2021, we got it real tight, and then we made it tighter. We got an educator that came in, and she did a tremendous job building out a workbook, and she did all of these. We hired a marketing team out in Austin to help us with both promoting the materials through email marketing, but also streamlining the onboarding process and the continuing education process. We've got a new designer that a guy that I wanted to work with for a very long time, for years, who's come in, and we hired him. He's launched our new Instagram graphics. He's done all the new graphics there, and he's got the new site that's
Which looks
coming out.
fantastic, by the
Oh
way.
man, thank you. And the site looks even better. That'll be live in about 3 or 4 weeks. So we've got all these wonderful things, the app included. We've got some B2B stuff we're doing, but it's all getting very structured, and it's really the culmination of all of this effort. Is now it's a long game satisfactory conclusion. You know that thing when you
Yeah.
just work on something for a long time and then it's like it all comes together. That's what's happening in 2022 for us. It's like it all is coming together.
I am so excited for you because I think of that all the time when I'm going to have that feeling with the captain's lifestyle. I just know the sense of satisfaction that I'm going to get from that. So the fact that that's happening for you this year, wow, like that, that is a good feeling.
Dude, I thank you for saying that. And I am when you go through these long periods like this, there's dark nights of the soul. Like there are moments where you're like, this is never going to work out. See that binary, it's never going to work out. I'm going to be stuck here forever. Another binary. No,
Maybe I should get a real job.
maybe I should get a real job. Part of, I heard this great quote. I mean, it's been said many times. Essentially, it just says that the entrepreneurship is an endurance sport. You know, it isn't a sprint; it's an endurance sport. You have to
Marathon.
be willing to get, a marathon. You have to be willing to go in there and stay. And this is one of Mark's greatest gifts as a business partner. Is Mark is an endurance guy. he will go stubbornly forward, regardless of how stupid that move may look in the short term. He'll just keep going.
And I love that. It's consistency, because he said he's going to be doing this for 50 years of his life, the language game. He's at, what was it, like 16 now?
Yeah.
And I love that he's committed to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark is that's how he works, man. And so yeah, you'll get there, Taylor. You gotta, as we say, we gotta thug it out occasionally. And those moments of thugging it out, man, they're rough. But you look back on it and you keep upgrading your problems. And then now thugging it out is like, yeah.
Upgrading your problems.
That's
that a lot.
You like that? I say it. I won't negation acknowledge, take credit for it. I've heard it before, but yeah, man, you keep upgrading those problems, and you look back and you're like, hey, remember that time when we were worried if we'd had $1,000 in the bank? And now we're talking about payroll. And now we're talking about, hiring all these contractors. And it's like, and the next thing you know, it'll be a larger problem and a larger one. And but they're all simply challenges that you get used to solving. And those reps make it easier the next time. So you'll get there. Just thug it out.
Yeah. The thugging it out for me has been the past year for sure. And now starting 2022, I already know I'm going to create this to be the best year of my entire life so far. And it's already starting to happen. Influence is growing on social media. I'm so grateful for all the messages that I'm getting. Got to interview Gary Vee, which was fantastic.
Did you really?
I did. Yeah.
Wow.
But you know what's even better than that?
Let's hear it.
I get to interview Adam Chin.
Oh, wow. I like that. Yeah. This is why you have 12,000 followers on Instagram. I get it.
There we go.
It's the charm.
So 2 more questions. So I mentioned the purpose of the Captain's Lifestyle is to #make thriving standard. What does thriving mean to you?
Ooh, thriving to me, I go back to my quote of Bledsoe: health, wealth, relationships. It means all facets of one's life is working in unison to move towards a either predetermined goal or a vision of what that life could be for you and the ones that you love. And I'm a big fan of the Heracles circle concept of you really work on you satisfy here, then you take care of your family and then your friends, your community, and then the last level you can give out to the world. Yep. So I think to me that's thriving, is that this is just so bright and full, and you can't help negation acknowledge. You can help other people because it's just so overflowing. So to me, that's a thrive. That's a thrive moment.
I love that, because that is exactly how I came to this realization that is my purpose, to make thriving standard. Because first I had to upgrade myself. I had to start thriving. Once I started thriving, then the people around me started to benefit. Once I noticed that, I was like, I need to make this my business. Like, this needs to be what I do. And I always say one of the greatest things I love about coaching is not getting to directly impact my clients, although that's fantastic. But what's even more rewarding than that is when clients tell me, hey, my mom saw me do this and this, and now she's starting to work out and she lost 7 pounds last month. That is that's what I'm going for. Because once you improve yourself, you improve those around you. Once we can all, the more people who do that, the more standard thriving will be.
I'm so happy to hear that. That's, coaches, the people who make the best coaches are the ones who are, that's what they get high off of. And I mean that in a good way. It's yes. What could feel better than
I'll answer you
hear that?
Nothing. More than I could almost care less about my own personal achievements. They feel good, but what's really rewarding is helping other people feel that way.
Yeah.
And that is the best high.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. Is there anything that I did not ask you, or that we didn't talk about that we should have?
Well, Chase Tolson and I are big fans of freedom. Are you a freedom guy?
I am a free man.
Yes, freedom. I'm big into freedom. I think this goes back to the victim, villain, perpetrator, hero paradigm. Be free. Instead of blaming other people, projecting everywhere, be responsible, because responsibility grants freedom, and freedom is so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I want to spend a few more minutes on this topic. It's not just anything. Like whatever new mandate or requirement or whatever it is that comes out, it's not just that. Like that's not the point. The point is it's about your freedom as a man. So go into that in a little bit more depth, because we could have spent the whole podcast talking about this.
This is part two. Taylor, we'll do a whole thing on freedom. Well, I mean, think about it. You've got, on one hand, you've got people who are very, you see it with fear-based people. You can do a one-to-one comparison. If someone's coming from a place of fear, more often than not, they don't really value freedom, because they value safety. And freedom is dangerous. Like freedom is like an entrepreneur, like there is a better than 0% chance. Well, quite good, because half the businesses in the country go out of business within the first year of starting.
I think it's more than that. It's 9 out of 10, I believe.
It's something ridiculous. Okay. So anything that you do that as a free person is going to be dangerous, whether that's bungee jumping or, cliff diving, whatever it is that you want to do that extreme, that's free. Yet there's a great Peter Drucker business quote that goes, all profit is derived from risk. And if you think about that, like they say, well, this is not fair. That person has all that money. That person took a tremendous risk. I mean, like they put everything on the line. And most times that often fails. And often you hear this with filmmakers, with artists, with entrepreneurs, with influencers, you name it. They fall flat on their face like the first 8 to 10 times they do it, right? And then that 10th time, it's like, oh. So you're not seeing all that. You're seeing, but the danger scares a lot of folks away, and that's. And I get it. Like we've all been there. We start there. We start with like, I'm scared. Like you should be, because it is dangerous. But the payoff, the profit that's derived from that risk is it's intoxicating in the best way possible. You get to call your own destiny versus being at the whims of some faceless authority or sometimes it is a face. It's the face of your mother or father who told you never be able to do this, or you're not good enough, or some person in school or a teacher or a guidance counselor said you couldn't do it, and I reject that completely. I go the other way. I say, take the risk, take the bumps, and then come out stronger, more resilient, anti-fragile. If you're familiar with that concept, come out the other side better.
It's the face of the flight attendant who told me that I'm required to wear a mask on the plane. Turns out you're not, because I didn't. And I've had the sheriff called on me multiple times. Nothing has happened. I fly without a mask. You are not required. So just putting it out there.
I mean, this will be controversial to say, but I mean, they told Rosa Parks to get off the bus.
Ooh.
And by the way, that the law that was lawful to do that, right? So they told people to use the other water fountain, I mean, and they're going to say, well, this is not the same thing. Is it? People are so certain that they're right oftentimes. And I think that's what gets people because the people who told Rosa Parks to sit in the back of the bus because certain races were inferior to others, they were certain that they were right. They were certain that they were on the right side of history. they were dead wrong. The people who, Hitler was the architect, and Goebbels and all those guys they're the architects of the Third Reich, but they're the architects who carried them out, who built their pyramids. These are regular people who were certain that they were doing the right thing in their minds. Be really careful of what when you hear this, especially when it's not something that you arrived at personally, it's just something that you're being told to believe and that you're certain. Be very wary of that. Is this my idea, or is this something that I have been told is the right idea? And my compliance will grant me some sort of gift or lenience in the future. It's a dangerous place to be in. Luckily, it sounds like you and I are very much on the same side when it comes to this type of thing. And if we weren't, that's fine too. But I do believe that rationality is winning out finally. It's taken a while, Taylor, but I think here in January 2022, people are coming to their senses more and more, and they're saying, this is a risk of being alive, is getting sick. This is a risk, and we can either hide and pretend that no one ever got sick before and they will never get sick again, or we can figure out a way to live with this and to build from it and get better and to thrive, to use your words, as human beings.
Here's a quote from Albert Einstein. Science can only flourish in an atmosphere of free speech. So if one side is being suppressed or deleted off of social media for expressing an opinion, for asking questions, if we're being frowned upon for questioning what we're being fed by these media companies, whatever side you're on, right or left, I don't care. I don't give a shit. This is not political for me. It's just about thinking for yourself, about being able to form your own opinion. I am not anti-mask. I am not anti-vaccine. I'm really hardly anti-anything. I'm anti-freedom. I want you to be able to make.
I'm pro-freedom. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm pro-freedom.
Thank you.
No, I agreed. Yeah. Listen, man, if someone wants to wear a mask for the rest of their lives, I said, go for it. They should have that right. And I would, by the way, I would fight for their right to do that.
100%.
If you want to wear that mask forever, please go for it. If you want to get 7 more doses or whatever, how many injections annually, I will fight for your right to do that. Right. And that's the way I look at the world. And that's the way it sounds like you look at the world. And, certain people, I think what it is, I've noticed this, and Peterson's talked about this a lot, is it can be quite intoxicating to certain people to have power over others and to use the state or to use the mobs and to enforce that power. And one of the things is I've noticed, I've obviously seen you on Instagram, Taylor, and you're in really good shape, and a lot of the people in our group are in good shape. I at 45, I'm in pretty good shape. I feel very healthy.
Soft talking knowledge.
Soft talking. Okay, I'll be more confident. I'm in good shape. I'm in very good shape, especially in this country. In South Korea, maybe less so. But yeah, I'm in really good shape for this country, and I feel in good shape on my own. But I look around and I see people, a lot of folks who are incredibly unhealthy, who for the first time in their lives have been given the ticket to wag their finger at other people's health choices. And I imagine how intoxicating that must be to someone who's been deeply unhealthy their entire lives, to look at someone like Taylor and to look at someone like Chase Tolson or, Angela Sisko or Joe Rogan and wag their finger and tell them that they know nothing about health. Imagine how good that must feel for someone who has had that much repression and bullying and who knows that they're in horrible health, to say, no, I now have the upper hand. You're the dummy.
I love that visual. You should see the comments on my TikToks. Instagram's not so bad yet. I do get a lot of funny ones on Instagram, but TikTok, wow. I posted one the other day. I had just finished my workout and I was like, listen, if you're fat or you're not happy with your body composition, it is for no other reason besides your poor lifestyle habits. It's not because of your genetics. It's because you eat like shit. You don't move your body. You're making excuses. That is why. And people lost their freaking minds. They started getting victim mentality, giving all these excuses. And I just laugh. So while it is funny, I do empathize for those people, because if you really think about it, they're in a bad position. They truly believe those things. They are in the victim mentality. They're being controlled by that mindset. And so I never comment back on any of them. I don't, attack anybody, because I do understand where they're coming from. But hopefully this podcast gets out to them, and hopefully they can start to upgrade their language and switch from conflict language to architect language. Speaking of which, tell people where we can find more about Enlifted and where we can find you.
Excellent. Great segue there, Taylor. I appreciate that. That was well done.
Working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good outro. You can find more about Enlifted at Instagram handle at Enlifted Coaches. And that'll be a direct line to Kimberly Kesting, who is fantastic. And she runs the show for us. And Mark as well. Mark checks in on that account now as well, occasionally, now that he's nuked his personal account. Mm-hmm. You can find me at Instagram at Adam Chin. I'm sorry, at Adam S. Chin, pardon me. And I'm sure you'll link to that in the show notes too, yep. Taylor. I post irregularly. As a Gen Xer, I'm less prone to being on social media than a lot of people younger than me. That said, I've challenged myself to post more. I used to live overseas, so I would post travel photography and things like that. Mm-hmm. And now that I'm, much more involved in the business, I could see myself doing more things like you're doing. I'm like Sherveen. Do you follow Sherveen from Symbiotica? He's tremendous influencer. He's posting some beautiful things, like Paul Check, if you know who that is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess those guys use social in the ways like you use it, in a very, very positive way. So yeah, anyways, I'd love to hear from you. If you like what I had to say, hit me up on Instagram, and definitely hit up Enlifted Coaches if you want to check out the certification. We're big fans, of course, and we love to help out positive, assertive, winning coaches.
Boom. Love it, Adam. Thank you for the fantastic conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I will see you next month.
Resilience.
See you
there, man.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.